Good morning, Rams, and welcome back to the Ram Report Morning Show. I'm your host, Parker Bennink, as always, bringing you the Heights Sound Scoop. To begin our show, we once again have some more announcements for our seniors. If your last name starts with A through L, you'll be picking up your cap and gown today from noon to 1, and then last names with M through Z will be picking them up on Monday at the same time. As for the rest of next week, Senior Awards Night will be taking place on Tuesday, and the first Heightstown prom in over a year will be happening on Friday. Can't wait. This week saw the 100th anniversary of the absolutely horrible Tulsa Massacre, an event in American history that more people should be familiar with. Here's Khalil Basse with the story.
The week has marked the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, one of the worst incidents of racial violence in the history of the United States. As apparent by the name of the incident, the massacre took place in Tulsa, Oklahoma from May 31st to June 1st in 1921, specifically the Greenwood District, which had prosperous African-American community. It all occurred following the arrest of Dick Rowland, a young African-American shoeshiner, for the assault of a white woman, Sarah Page, a 17-year-old. Although there is no actual evidence that Rowland did anything wrong, the incident sparked conflict between the already tense local whites and African Americans outside of the courthouse. Outnumbered by the mob, the African Americans retreated to Greenwood, which was subsequently looted and burned by white raiders. Hundreds lost their lives, and a greater number of people were injured, but the true extent of the damage was much larger. Thousands of homes and businesses were destroyed, and what had once been affluent African-American community. Rowland was later cleared of his charges. It's important to educate people on the massacre, especially after its 100th anniversary, so that such a thing can never happen again. I'm Khalil Basse with Ram Reporter. Back to you.
Thank you, Khalil. Hopefully such a thing never happens again. On this week's Ram Report Sports Update, we'll be covering the girls softball team and their excellent recent performance. Here's Matthew Salter with the story.
This past Tuesday, our girls softball team began their back-to-back state championship run. They played Monroe in the first round of the Central Jersey Group 4 state playoffs. Heightstown went down 1-0 early, but in the third inning, Heightstown had the bases loaded with 0 outs. Jackie Missoni walked up to the plate and blasted a grand slam to deep center field. This got all the bats going, as Abby Bell also hit 2 more home runs later that game, including another grand slam. Izzy Hume also had an incredible moment in this game as she got her 100th career hit. Later today at 4, the girls traveled to Montgomery for the quarterfinals in the state playoffs. We wish the girls the best of luck.
Thank you, Matt, and congratulations to our softball team. We're hoping for a strong finish to this season. With case numbers at a record low, there look to be some changes in store for New Jersey coronavirus restrictions. Here's Laura Pavlovic with more information.
It's time for everyone's favorite Ram Report segment, the COVID update. Some good news to start us off, as June is looking to be the first month in a while with new and current COVID cases being in the low hundreds since mid-May, since numbers have been decreasing with more and more people being vaccinated. Speaking of vaccinations, currently about 50% of New Jersey is vaccinated, with about 9 million people having gotten the first dose and 5 million being fully vaccinated. Everyone 12 years and older can get vaccinated, as it's anticipated that kids under 12 will be vaccinated over the summer. We can hope that by the start of the next school year, we can be back to normal. I'm Laura Pavlovic for the Ram Report. Back to you.
Thank you, Laura. Hopefully case numbers will continue to stay low so that we don't have to reinstate any restrictions. As we found new ways to connect with each other over the last year, the Heightstown High School Artists Union came up with the idea of the Quarren 12x12 canvas submission. And with some of the submissions, here's Alejandro Mendoza.
As we are in a tough time and we are missing our fellow classmates and teachers, the Quarren 12x12 exhibition sponsored by the Heightstown High School Artists Union was the best way to connect with each other. The Quarren 12x12 exhibition gave HHS students, staff, and our extended RAM family a chance to explore the world of art, creating a unique artwork to exhibit in the show. The parameters were simple. All work needed to be on a 12x12 canvas given out at the Heightstown High School, provided by the Artists Union. The subject was up to the artists. Everyone did a really good job and tried their best.
The Quorum 12 by 12 was a great success. We had a lot of people participating. The feedback was fantastic, and it's something that we definitely want to do again next year. And I'm glad everybody had a good time. If you guys didn't get a chance to see it, go to the Hightstown High School District website, and it's on the website.
I'm Alejandro for the Ram Report. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Alejandro, and thank you to all of the participants. You clearly worked hard on this project, so kudos to you. Here at the Ram Report, we've talked about cicadas on a few different episodes, but now all of our predictions have finally come to light. Here's our very own Mr. Koontz with the story.
That, folks, is the sound of thousands and thousands of cicadas in the bright sun of midday. I call it the Million Cicada Chorus. The cicadas began emerging here in Princeton 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't until early last week that the sound became really noticeable. By the end of the week, it was pervasive and loud. These cicadas, called Brood X, are very distinctive. They have dark bodies, red eyes, and transparent wings. Other cicadas are green. They also only emerge every 17 years. So these insects were all born in 2004, approximately the same time as this year's senior class at HHS. Now, I've lived here in Princeton for 30 years, so I remember when these guys last emerged back in 2004. This time, there's more of them. A lot more. Each day at first light, before the sun rises, you can already hear them. That whirring that kind of sounds like a machine, that's them. Each morning over the past week, I have found that more have emerged from underground. The cicadas emerge as nymphs, looking kind of like a beetle. But they soon shed this exoskeleton, leaving the nymph husks behind. The husks are everywhere. The adult cicada, the one that makes all the noise, is notable for its, well, dopiness. They often end up on their backs and cannot right themselves to save their lives. Literally. They are easy prey for birds who have been gorging themselves silly on cicadas. When they fly, they are slow and lumbering and often collide with houses and trees, again making them easy targets for birds. Just look at these guys, hanging out on a white shed door frame like a bunch of sitting ducks. The only way they survive is because there's so darn many of them. The birds just simply can't eat them all. It turns out that birds are picky eaters, too. They only eat the parts of the cicada they like, and then they leave the heads and wings lying around afterwards.
So yesterday around here it was waves. They would come in and it would just be they would all kind of synchronize their singing.
Mm-hmm. And it was Mr. Emerson, who also lives in Princeton, took us to see the cicada sites around his house.
I don't know why they're in my grass, but they're everywhere in here.
What are we looking at here?
We're looking at where all the cicadas decided to come out of my yard. There are thousands of these holes everywhere. This is what I like to call the tree of husks. They're all in the branches and on these leaves. And then if you come down here, you can just see the carnage.
Those are all husks?
Yeah. And if you paint up the tree and above your head.
Oh, look at them all. During the full midday sun, the cicadas that survive, millions of them, are at their loudest. It seems every tree in town is full of them, and the sound is incredible. This is all a big mating ritual, of course. The cicadas will mate, the females will lay their eggs in the tree's branches and twigs, and the adult cicadas will then die. A few weeks after that, the cicada eggs will hatch, and the young nymphs will bury themselves underground. The 17-year cycle will begin anew. Until then, I'll be spending part of my morning sweeping up dead cicadas from my front porch and watching my steps so I don't end up squashing living ones. Now, a lot can happen in 17 years, so who's to say where I'll be when these guys come back in 2038? But on the whole, I was glad I was here to experience the complete cacophony that is Brood X. For the Ram Report, I'm Mr. Koontz. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Koontz, and hopefully your ears are recovering nicely from those cicadas. And once again, here's Megan Sharp with another Ram Report Moment of Zen.
Hi, and welcome back to the Stress Us with Art segment. The purpose of this is to provide a fun way for kids to de-stress using art. Why don't you step into my studio? For today's art project, we'll be making stained glass line art and talking about the stress-reducing benefits of line art. If you want to find out more, go to the HHS Instagram account, hhs.stressususwithart. Hope you have a stress-free day.
Thank you, Megan. And it's time for another film review courtesy of Josh Carmona, this time with a throwback to last year's Tenet. And here he is with the review.
Hey Rams, and welcome back to Carmona's Cut, where I give you my take on the movies. I just saw Christopher Nolan's new action sci-fi thriller bonanza Tenet, which was released last year, and it was interesting. The premise of Tenet is based on time travel, but not exactly your standard Back to the Future kind. It can be somewhat difficult to explain, but the basic idea is that there are machines that can reverse the way that objects move in time. This is a fairly interesting premise, but it turns out to be pretty limiting, and you start to expect a lot of the twists that happen throughout the film. Tenet, like many Nolan films, treats its premise like it's too intellectual for the masses, so there are many scenes of exposition essentially explaining the same thing over and over. As Interstellar did with black holes, Tenet takes something that people understand pretty well and pretends that it's the first movie to ever explore the topic. Ultimately, the biggest problem with the movie is that it lacked a strong emotional core. The only person who seemed to feel anything at all was Elizabeth Debicki's character. On top of that, the villain's motivation seemed to be shoehorned in just so that there's someone to fight. Compound that with some pretty bad dialogue and you get a film that doesn't really have a purpose. However, there are quite a few things I liked about Tenet. It is a Christopher Nolan movie, so it looks fantastic. The action scenes, especially the opening set piece and the airport scene, are really well done, and there are a few scenes that use the time gimmick in creative and interesting ways. In spite of lackluster dialogue, all of the actors give great performances. Additionally, for a movie this length, which is 2.5 hours, it's paced quite well. Tenet wasn't a terrible movie. If you don't mind the length, and you don't mind being condescended to a bit, it's definitely a fun movie to turn your brain off and go, whoa, the explosion is backwards. If that's not your thing, I don't think you're missing out. I'm going to give Tenet a 3 out of 5 Rams. I'm Josh Carmona with the Ram Report. Back to you.
Thank you, Josh, and Tenet is available on HBO Max if you would like to watch on your own. That finishes this week's episode of the Ram Report. As always, of course, have a ramtastic day, and to conclude our show, here's a performance of Sleep by Eric Whitacre from the Hightstown Wind Ensemble, which is organized and edited by Alejandro Gonzalez-Palmer.
you.